Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a video about PhD research. If you don't know already, I am a student. I'm an HDR candidate or an HDR student. So HDR means higher degree research. And I am studying in Australia. My field is evolutionary biology and paleontology. So I wanted to go through how I plan my research, and I feel like this is going to be very useful if you are planning to embark on a PhD as well. So here I have my two PhD notebooks as well as planner. So this is the planner and this one is the PhD notebooks that I am using currently. This is only the minimal setup that I am showing you. I do have several other notes that I do not have with me right now. Some of them are in my lab, some of them are in the office, but these are the ones that I have on hand. For my PhD planner, I have a 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔, which has all of my plans, future planning and schedule planning. So all of that goes in here. And it's divided by week. So I did mark some appointments and I know that there's a deadline. So there's a deadline and all of that. Unfortunately, the 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔 doesn't have a lot of notes pages. That's why I have my Hobonichi 𝒕𝒊𝒅𝒐 day free. And I'm really loving how the day free works for the type of planning that I've put into it. So I do have an inbox and I do have a plan on what I want to do with this. So the difference between this one, the Hobonichi 𝒕𝒊𝒅𝒐 and the 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔 planner is that the 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔 has future things while the Hobonichi 𝒕𝒊𝒅𝒐 has my daily logs. And daily logs are very important when you are actually doing or planning your PhD. It's important to write down what you have done so that it's not all in your head. And when you are planning ahead, so when I'm planning in here, I would consult this planner as well. So I just have this running daily log. So I write what I've done for the day, just a summary of the main thing that I did for that day. For example, I did write the discussion part of my paper and then I had a rest after that because it is one of the most taxing things to do. I have done the reference or fixed the reference on the weekends and then I did send it out on the 6th to my supervisors and got feedback on the 7th, in which we decided on a new journal to submit the research to. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So for this page, I did make a note. I do date them, but this is not something or a running to-do list that I did just for one day. I'm going to do this throughout the course of the week or the month. It looks to be like this is going to be extended until the second week because I haven't done a lot of them. And this is for the project that we will be talking about today. I mean, a lot of them will be for that. So these pages are for my main to-do list as well as for logging what I have done for the day. So that's the purpose of this planner. So technically, this is my PhD planner. And then this is my PhD notebook. So it is notes. Planning comes in here, but not as intense as my PhD planner. They are doing two different things. And I do suggest to divide the information between different notebooks. And here I have an actual notebook. I'm going to take this out. So this is my PhD notebook and this is the Hobonichi original sized or A6 sized notebook. And then this one is my day free 2021. And I do have a lot of notes in here. So here I have my notes for the different projects that I am doing. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So I have things, our ideas go in here. I mark down important things. This is usually my running notes. So running notes go in here, and I'm going to put this back. So this is for the next one, and we're going to play around with our Hobonichi notebook. So this notebook is still black. We are going to set it up today because there are things that I wanted to note on here, and I'm just going to bring the camera a little bit lower. Okay, I think this is better because earlier I don't think you could see it very well, and I'm sorry it's a little shadowy because it's such a bright day. It's hurting my eyes. It is that kind of day. And if you have any questions about anything I'm talking about, feel free to leave it in a comment down below, especially if you're just about to do your PhD or you're currently in your PhD and you're looking how to organize research projects, which I am going to be doing today. So just a disclaimer. So my topic or my field is 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔, paleontology. So that means I'm mostly dealing with fossils. That already makes this research very streamlined. So when you are going to apply what I'm talking about to your own research, just be mindful that these are the things that I am doing, not going to be the same for each and every field. That's why it's important to know what field I'm in. Also, there is going to be a difference between your main PhD work versus projects they're in. So for PhD work, you have your PhD project, so that's your main one, which has its own research question or questions. I do suggest streamlining this to just one instead of having too many. That is too much to do. Just remember that when you're doing your PhD, it would depend on your school, but in my school, so in Australia, we have milestones that you have to meet that are very specific. My tip is that keep it small and target it. That means you should just do first the minimum and then work from there. So minimum first, because if you tack on too much like I did in the very beginning of my candidature, it became really chaotic, especially since my project was hit by the pandemic. There were very many things that I had to realign so that I could graduate. So once again, keep it small and targeted, minimum amount first. And another tip that I wanted to give you, research projects should be unique with major contributions. So major contribution means that you're contributing to the field that you are in. So for example, I am dealing with fossils, I'm dealing with paleontology, that is my field. So my major contribution is to describe things that haven't been described before. So species that haven't been described before or analyzed at all that much. So that is an example of a major contribution. Another contribution that you can do is that there is this really, really famous established theory. You're going to either agree for additional support, or you're going to say that maybe we should reconsider the applicability and generality of said theory. So those are two things that you can do. There are also very many other things that could be your major contribution, but those are just the two things that are quite popular. So within this project or main PhD project are several projects. For me, I have 4, but I'm going to keep it, for example, to 3. So this is like a pretend project. So you have the question that can be answered using 3 lines of evidence. A lot of students ask, is my project PhD level? So PhD use a lot of lines of evidence to answer your question so that your answer to your question is more based on a lot of different variables. So for me, my question is evolutionary biology, and I have 3 lines of evidence. And these 3 lines of evidence that I am looking at are my individual research projects. So in this case, all 3 evidences or all 3 projects are taken equal. They occur one at a time because I want to standardize what I'm doing. So today I'm going to talk about how to plan each of the research projects. So this one. So when I say R, it means research. There is no other meaning for R. When I say papers and projects, this is going to take at least 6 months from the very, very start. In the beginning, I thought that I could do away with 3 months because I'll be building my feasibility, which is number 1, before I actually, early on in my candidature. That's nice to do. But what happened was that early on in my candidature, and this is what's going to happen to you in the first year of your candidature, you are only going to be dealing with this. So actually, the literature review that's going to be in your thesis and in your dissertation talks about this. Of course, each project will have its own literature review, and they will go into the projects, individual projects. That's a different literature review. You're basically doing literature review at every single step of your project. Literature review doesn't end. So the first thing you're going to do when you're planning your research project is to do a feasibility study by yourself in your head, and that's why you need this notebook. So you already are guided by your PhD question, and based on your PhD question, you're going to find the materials. And this is your what. Based on the materials that you have, you will then formulate the individual research questions of your mini research projects. So this question still aligns with the PhD goal, your PhD aims and scopes, but is asking in an independent question. So if you read the paper or you read the project that we are doing now, it will still hold on its own without being connected to all the other things that you're doing. So your research question is your why. Why would this material contribute or answer your PhD question? And then with your question and your materials, what methods will be available for you? How will you answer your research question based on your materials? And this stage takes about 2 weeks. Why is that? Can't you do it in one day, in one sitting? Yes, you can, but then you're going to have to look at the literature of what was already there. It's very important that your research is unique and have never been done before in a reasonable manner. Because, methodologies, they repeat, but yours need to be unique enough to be able to stand on its own and be accepted to journal as an original paper. So that takes 2 weeks, and you will write this down because you will also be sending it to your supervisors. Your panel will tell you if your project is good to go. So you need to convince them that this project is feasible. I know that it can be done. Not necessarily that you are already equipped on everything, that you know everything, and that you don't need assistance. That doesn't matter. As long as it's feasible and you know exactly what you need to be able to complete this project, then it's going to be all right for your supers, because they will also help you out. So once your super says, okay, go, here's your funds. Also, I haven't even talked about funding. I'm very lucky that I have access to funding, a relatively sizable funding with which to complete my work. But otherwise, you also have to talk to your supervisor about the funding. And also, it's very important if you are part of a larger project, like your PhD is one part of a larger project, that's also something to consider. That's why you need to consult your supervisors at every point in time. They need to know what you're doing. You need to tell them what you're doing because they won't remember.
I promise you, I've met with my supervisors many times, and I'd had to tell them exactly what was going on in my research from the very beginning, even the decisions that they've made. Like, you told me to do this because I told you this and this and this, and they don't remember that.
That's normal. It's not because they're bad supervisors. That's just how supervisors generally go. So let's say you're approved. First, you need to take yourself out, go on a date with your friends, see your partner. You must celebrate every single milestone. Already, this approved is a milestone because it's really intense work and you can lose yourself if you're not careful with your self-care. You sit down and make your schedule. First, you have your sample prep, which is your data gathering. So data gathering and data analysis are two different things. I'm just lumping up data gathering here in sample prep. Once you have that scheduled, then you will schedule your experimentation. I'm lucky that my samples they're not alive, they're fossils. So the axis is the only thing I'm looking at. For example, if I was looking at living animals, then I'd be in trouble because I need permission, ethics, and those kinds of things that are paperwork heavy. Experimentation, however, is a completely different animal. When you're going through your experimentation, then make sure that you are prepared for that. You know what lab you're going to go to. You know the methods. If you don't know the methods, that is okay. You ask your supervisor to teach you or for them to provide training for you in some capacity. Next, you have your analysis. Your analysis is going to be in 3 different levels. First is you have your raw data. Your raw data needs to be cleaned. You can move on to analysis 2, which is pulling out only the most important data, because there will be data noise. That is normal, and don't worry about that. You just cut out the parts that you're not going to need. And once you have that fixed, then you can go into statistics, which is data cleaning. Once you have that clean, then you are actually good to go. And then you can party again. So, within all of this, you need to be reporting to your supers of any progress, but more importantly, any problems, because that's going to be part of your limitation. For example, there are times where my experimentation failed. So those things are not necessarily bad. I probably failed 4 times in my first research project. But when that happens to you, it's completely all right because it happens to everyone. Just carry on. That is my tip. In the beginning, it was like, oh my God, I'm so heartbroken. In the end, I'm like, dang. You failed again? All right. Let's start from scratch. So every time I fail, I will have to go back to this. And sometimes when I super fail and I feel like it's just not going to work, I go back to number 1. So at any point in time here, you may be going back to number 1. So writing is next. When you're writing, the first thing you're going to write is your abstract. This already should be sent to your supers. Oh, by the way, schedule 1 can be 3 months, 2 months, depending on how you're doing. But yeah. So once the abstract is done, so this is probably going to take you 1 week. 1 week plus all the feedback. And sometimes it takes supervisors 2 weeks, sometimes 1 month to get back to you. That's normal. So you have to manage your time wisely. That's why you report all the time, so that you also keep tabs on them the way that they're keeping tabs on you. Once that is approved, then you can do your next stage of experimentation just to recheck everything. For example, your super says that this number looks funny. Go back to your raw data, clean it up again, and then get back to me. So this is what's going to happen. Schedule 2 is going to happen. Oh, also, you're going to clean up your research question in a way that now you can reframe your research question to a yes or no. For example, does this activity affect the fossil when it was living? Yes or no? Because then you know exactly what data you're going to have to support that. You'll also clean up the abstract because you will likely have co-authors who are not in your supervisory panel, and they need to be alerted that this is what's going on with the paper. If you have any comments, please comment it now, because I'm going to be writing this soon and I do not have time for a second run of experimentation. Last, you're going to choose your journal. Choose the journal that you're going to submit to. Use their format already as soon as now, because sometimes they want you to submit LaTeX. I don't really know how to pronounce it because no one has pronounced it to me. I just read it, and it's this new way of submission taking out Word and putting it in like a coding software where it's complicated in a way that I'm just so used to writing in Word that I just don't want to deal with it. So early on, choose to journal, because now I'm very surprised of the amount of work I have to do because we're going to have to submit in LaTeX format. So having said that, I'm pretty sure you know which journals I'll be submitting to. So 5 is check-in. So this is when you will have your final abstract. And if you can, this is when you will start to think about conference. Because what I did was I presented to 4, 5 conferences, maybe 6 conferences, including like the informal ones. We will have to address all the questions that came up to see what the different sciences or different fields think about my project, because I'm working on many different fields. And then writing. So this will take you a month with all of your tables and figures all done. 7 is your final. And this is for approval from supers and co-authors. And then submit to journal. And we have done a whole page and 6 months. So it takes a really, really long time. Now for my project, I also recommend getting a desk calendar if you have an office. In my school, they provided us with a desk. So in my office above my lab, I keep a version of this. So this is a desk calendar from Kaiser Style. Maybe that's the company a spin-off company that makes this. Okay. So for here, so this is December. Let's say I'm going to start this in January. If I start this in January will be my feasibility. Now I only said 2 weeks because the other 2 weeks of this is for when you are prepping or waiting on your supervisors to give you feedback. And then February, March, and April will be schedule 1. And then number 3, so writing for the abstract, as well as schedule 2 can be in May if you're lucky. And then June will be number 5. Final check-in, as well as probably a portion of number 6. And then July is the rest of number 6 and number 7. So 6 months. So I like to keep this on my table so that I can just write this information down over here with the proper details. So that is my PhD life and how I would recommend doing your research project or planning your research project. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about, make sure to leave it in a comment down below, because I really do want to help you guys out, because sometimes there are things that you want to know and there's no one to ask. You ask your supers and they give you really funny answers. That's really normal. So I think that it's important that PhD students reach out to other PhD students and talk about their experiences. So you guys are going to be guided. It's going to be different for everyone, but at least you have a general idea of what's going on elsewhere, because this can be a very isolating thing. So that's it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you got something out of this video, a peek into my PhD life, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video. Bye!